I wanted to go over just a little bit about the construction details on it. And the construction details may indicate why this well has some earthquakes coincident with it. There's no doubt that there's a coincidence going on here. If you speak to scientists, seismologists, they're going to stop clear short of saying that injection caused these earthquakes, because scientists want the absolute best data they can get. But if you look at things from a practical standpoint, if you look at the coincidence in timing, injection starts in December, earthquakes start 3 months later, and then they keep going. If you look at the coincidence of spacing, the earthquake's proximity to the injection well, those two things alone, I think, warrant very close examination as well, and I was very pleased when the ODNR shut the well down. So the well is 9,192 feet deep. It goes all the way down to those very deep, old crystalline rocks. At the base, and it's included in the 192 feet, so from 8,900 some odd feet down to another 204 feet, they have what is called a rat hole. Now the drilling industry has a lot of colorful terms. A rat hole is just a space in the bottom of the well that you leave so that when you lower different tools down the well to measure properties of the rocks, you have space for it. It also allows space for material to slough and fall into the bottom of the hole. And so this rat hole goes into these very old rocks that have the faults in them. The casing goes down to 8,215 feet. So that's the steel pipe that you run down inside the well. Notice that the casing stops short of the total depth of the well. In other words, you got about 977 feet, or roughly 1,000 feet, which is open hole, meaning that the borehole is open to the rock. There's not casing separating the rock from the borehole. The formations that are receiving the injection fluids are the Copper Ridge Dolomite, the Conesaga Formation, the Rome Formation, the Mount Simon Sandstone, and these Precambrian basement rocks. None of these rocks in here, with the exception of the Conesaga Formation, are all that permeable or porous. And that's important because if a rock is permeable, that means fluids will flow into it relatively easily. If it's porous, that means there's lots of space for those fluids. None of these, with the exception of the Conesaga Formation, are particularly permeable or porous. The Mount Simon Sandstone is a favorite target for injection in other parts of the state, particularly CO2 sequestration. We store carbon dioxide down there. But as you move eastward into the state, the Mount Simon Formation becomes less of a good storage rock and more of just a dolomite type rock. And then the injections start on December 2010. So one of the things that I'm suggesting here is that by having open hole completion over all these different formations, none of them, with the exception of the Conesaga being particularly permeable, you're pushing fluids into places that you're forcing them to go into, places that perhaps they might not otherwise flow. In the Precambrian basement, fractures and faults represent spaces where that fluid can flow. Now if we look at, just to back up a little bit, we look at the Ohio basement structure. These little red dotted lines that you see, these are known fault lines in the very old billion years old or older rocks. And so there's a number of fault lines. There's a major structural element here. It's called the Grenville Front. There's a magnetic anomaly right here, and then there's a rift out here. These are all geologic structures. And so this is where you find the structures. Now, a lot of what we know about the structures here in Ohio, this part of the state, are based on oil and gas drilling, but more so on seismic testing. And we just don't know that much about the structure, to tell you the truth. But if you were to look at, well, I forgot I had this slide in here. The structures have to do with the Grenville Mountains that formed about 1 billion or more years ago, and then more recently the Appalachian Mountains, a little bit off to the east of us. If we look at the injection wells, so this is a brand new posting that the ODNR put up on their website. They just put it up in January this year, so it's only a couple days old. It shows the locations of the injection wells. And you can see that, and different colors are used depending on what the depth they are. You can see that the wells are basically situated in eastern Ohio. Why do you suppose the wells are situated in eastern Ohio? Not very many out here?
Are there to take the fluid from Pennsylvania?
No, that's what they're doing now, but that's not why they're here.
Because of the thickness of the shale?
No, they're here because this is where the oil and gas production takes place in Ohio. And Class II injection wells are designed specifically to dispose of the production fluids that are non-valuable. A common production fluid that comes out of the Clinton Formation is brine water. It produces a lot of brine water. As you drive through the country, you see these pump jacks and storage tanks, and it's nice to think that those storage tanks are filled with oil, but they're pretty much filled with brine water, with a little scum of oil on the top. And so that brine water has to be disposed of somehow, and in 1983, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources was granted primacy from the US EPA to control their own Class II injection. Not all states have that. For example, Pennsylvania doesn't have it, and West Virginia doesn't have it. And that is why brine and flowback water is coming from Pennsylvania, is because they don't have the stringent enough regulations for the federal EPA to give them control of it. Ohio, on the other hand, has had very stringent regulations for a very long time, and back in 1983, the federal EPA said, do it yourselves, you do a better job than us, and that's basically how it works.